Welcome everyone to the town hall hosted by the alumni of the Women in Aviation Advisory Board. We host these town halls about every other week to try to educate people more in open, broader discussions about women in aviation, how we can get more of them, how we can keep them, how we can promote them, and as a result of that, improve the innovation and safety and productivity and sustainability of the aviation industry, not just in the US, but around the world. And today I am delighted to introduce a dear friend of mine, fellow board member from the International Aviation Women's Association and fellow board member from the Women in Aviation Advisory Board, Bobbi Wells. You are incomparable. Thank you so much for hosting today's town hall about pathways to careers in aviation.
Renee, what a wonderful introduction and way for us to start this conversation. I couldn't be more delighted to talk about this topic, partially because it's such an important topic in our industry, and also because I have an amazing panel joining us today with very diverse perspectives about how we can drive more women, encourage more women into our industry, and then once they come into the industry, ways that we can encourage them to stay because they feel valued and feel like they can make a difference. So we're going to start off by asking all of our panelists to introduce themselves, and we're just going to go across my screen. So Thomas, we'll start with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bobbi. And thank you for having me as an ally in this incredible conversation. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on the time zone you're in. My name is Thomas Rajan. I have the privilege of serving as the Vice President of Global Talent and Benefits for the world's largest airline, American Airlines. It is an incredible privilege to be here, to be a part of this conversation. I've been with American now back about 5 years, having a career in aviation over 20, both in the airline and outside the airline and in a variety of different disciplines. And in this most current role, helping to take care of our team members from hire to retire. As we think about bringing the best and the brightest into the organization, how do we develop them? How do we give them the benefits to care about the things and people that matter most? It's a privilege to be with you all.
Awesome, Thomas. Thank you. Robbin, you're next.
Thanks, Bobbi. I'm Robbin Page, and I am Vice President of Human Resources Services, Global Compensation and Learning and Development here at Federal Express, based in Memphis, Tennessee. I have spent the past 25 years, it sometimes still surprises me when I say that, with FedEx. And before that, I was in private practice with a law firm here in Memphis. I spent a lot of time, not so much with the hire to retire, but with the while you're here, I am going to make this the best experience possible. And really try to make this a place that you want to be and to help develop the whole person as both an employee, as a leader, whatever you want to be. So thanks for having me, Bobbi.
Robbin, that's great. Okay, Nicole, you're up.
Thanks, Bobbi. Real pleasure to be here and be a part of the discussion today. My name is Nicole Huque. I am a partner with the executive search firm Krauthamer and Associates. I lead our global aviation, aerospace, and defense practice. I've been in the aviation sector for a little over 15 years now. And particularly interested in taking part in conversations like the ones we're having today, because I am a champion of really advancing women and people of color into the leadership roles within the aviation and aerospace community. So once again, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. You can see the diversity we have on this panel already, and Jodi rounds that out by representing the FAA.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jodi Baker. I'm the Deputy Associate Administrator for the FAA's Aviation Safety Organization. We're responsible for developing the standards and certifying and overseeing continuous operational safety of aircraft and products and airmen and air carriers and any operations personnel, maintenance folks, basically oversight of the system. I've been with the FAA now 22 years. So I have a large passion for promotion. Obviously, I've come up through the ranks, and this has been an excellent career for me personally, and I'm always happy to talk about it with others.
That's awesome, Jodi. I think that the perspectives you all bring are going to be particularly useful with our audience today and those who get to watch this in recording. So we'll get started. The first question is that challenges on recruiting talent are real and present in our industry. I know each one of you feel those challenges each and every day as you're trying to fill out your teams or trying to meet the expectations of your customers. How is your organization meeting this challenge in new and innovative ways? And let's start with Nicole.
Sure. So I like to say I'm part of the solution. So when clients engage, it's the focus is on finding the right talent. What I would say has occurred over the past 24 months is that we're having a much more strategic conversation around diversity. There's a real recognition that as an industry, that is an area of opportunity for us. So a lot of my mandates now are focused around specific diversity recruitment. And where I see companies really making inroads is when they start looking at recruitment as a strategic area within the business, an area where you've got to have more of a long-term view and worthy of significant investment. A lot of the work that I am doing is not just focused around filling immediate openings within organizations now, but this whole notion of creating pipelines, looking to the future. How do we ensure that we are canvassing and sourcing from broader pools and creating pipelines for immediate need as well as longer term need?
Thanks for that, Nicole. I think you've brought up a couple of really important elements. Many times we have thought in the past about recruitment as just though it just popped up in front of us when an opening appeared. And clearly there's much more to it than that. It's a longer term investment. Jodi, I know that a lot of people who come to work for the government, and the FAA in particular, do that with an expectation of spending a career at the FAA. So how is your organization thinking strategically and innovatively about recruitment and talent pipeline?
Thanks, Bobbi. So there's a couple things. So first, some people don't realize that we get a lot of people into their second career. So for example, in the area that I'm in, aviation safety, we bring in a lot of technical experience that has already been gained in another place, typically an airline or a repair station or a flight school or in a company. So part of our long-term thinking around talent is we need to think earlier in a folks' career, not just when they're ready to come to the FAA. We are invested in making sure that the talent pool before you get to the FAA is bigger. So whether that's partnering with organizations externally to help promote careers in aviation, to help people see the career path from where they are right now to perhaps coming to the FAA, we really have a mindset of rising tides rise all boats. And so we partner around with other organizations to make our talent pool bigger. Secondarily, in case you guys didn't know, we're kind of a conservative government agency. And so we were probably slower to adapt things like social media, a blog, use of Instagram, partnering with influencers. So that is very real as well, because we got to meet people where they are. And I have a 15-year-old child. I have a 15-year-old son. He will not touch Facebook with a 10-foot pole, but he's all over Instagram all the time. So being able to be diverse and reaching people where they are, hitting, I'm squarely in the Facebook generation. So I do see all of our recruiting via Facebook. My son will see it on Instagram. So that really addresses the right now of meeting people where they are and not just relying on them to come to us.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jodi. I think you've hit on some really essential points. Robbin, how about you? You lead not only compensation, but it's really strategy, people strategy for FedEx Express. So can you talk about your efforts around recruitment?
Sure. So we realized that the talent pool, this was even before COVID, was getting thin. And we had got to, not only focus on this pipeline, but we needed people immediately. And so we thought, well, you know what, we'll address it with one fell swoop, hopefully, and create our own pipeline. Okay. And so what we did is we started and we created something that's called the LIFE program. That's what I'll talk about. The LIFE program is called Learning Innovation, Learning Inspired by FedEx. Sorry. And the program is a partnership with the University of Memphis, and it's a global program. And what we do is we will bring you in to work in one of our hub or ramp locations. Not, always the most glamorous of jobs, but completely necessary. And we will pay for you to get a college degree. And so you're thinking, well, how is that different than any tuition reimbursement program? Well, let me tell you. So this is completely no out-of-pocket costs for you at all. We pay all the costs. You do not have to take a college entrance exam. To Jodi's point about meeting people where they are, a lot of times people are either they haven't finished their high school degree, or they're fearful about the unknown about taking an SAT or ACT entrance exam. We've removed the barriers. We've removed the cost barrier. We've removed the time barrier because it's their global campus, so it's an online degree. We've removed this fear barrier because you don't have to take the entrance exam. And if you didn't matriculate through high school, we will start there and get you matriculated for you to then enter into the LIFE program. So we have over 50 graduates of the program who got their college degree so far, and each of those graduates has gone on into a higher level job, whether it be management or senior management. So we're seeing some benefit to the LIFE program, and not only it's a great thing for our communities that we live and work in, and with our hometown team, the University of Memphis Tigers. So what could be wrong?
That's awesome, Robbin. Thank you. And the LIFE program is an amazing program. Not only does it provide access like you described, but it also potentially targets students who wouldn't normally think of aviation as a pathway career for them.
It targets people in underserved communities often, and it targets people who you're right. They wouldn't think of coming to work at FedEx, right? And the other good thing is if you come and you work here and you get your degree and we pay for all of it, there's no obligation to stay. We hope you'll stay, right? We hope that you will love FedEx as much as we do, but if you don't, that's okay. You can go work at the FAA or American Airlines, wherever you want to work. There's no commitment required on your part.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's wonderful. All right, Thomas, I know you have a lot to talk about on this topic of innovative recruitment. Would you kick it off for American?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Bobbi. And just such incredible ideas that have the panelists have already shared. We are in arguably one of the most challenging times for our economy building back at the speed and the rate at which it has come back. I remember a time when, as we were in the pandemic, 97% of our revenues had evaporated as an airline, and we were seeing pictures of airplanes sitting on the ground. And now to kind of look where we are, which we are incredibly excited about, is to see every plane full, every flight taking off, every flight going to the places that people want to. What powers that is our ability to have the human capital behind that. And I'm just so incredibly proud of the team in the work they've done, where we've hired more people in the first 6 months of this year than we did all of last year. And the work that has been done to be able to bring those people, what we've seen is not just a war for talent, but truly a race for talent as well. One of the things that I'm sure that many of the folks here have also experienced is, in our purpose of caring for people on life's journey, one of the things that we say about how we take care of our customers, our team members, is to make sure that each of our team members go through thorough background checks. Well, those things used to take 16 sometimes, 16 weeks to complete, 3 or 4 months to be able to get all the paperwork done and all of the things that were there. Well, people today aren't going to wait for 3 or 4 months to start a job. And so just incredible work by the team to take it down from 16 weeks to 16 days and still maintain the level of integrity and safety and quality and consistency is just remarkable, because it allows team members and candidates to be able to make those decisions even faster. What we've also found is what used to be a single type of message that used to go into the marketplace. Jodi had mentioned you have to be on both Instagram and Facebook in order to be able to go talk to your potential candidates. Well, even on those both channels, you can't have the same message that goes out, because depending on the type of the audience, what we found is, as an example of an area that I care for, is our world of benefits. There's a group of individuals that care more about a certain type of benefit, and how do we make sure that we are being clear and communicative about that. That has forced us to raise our game and the necessity to be able to talk differently to a high school graduate or a new college graduate about what's important for them around helping to get stability, be able to build wealth, to be able to build the sustainable foundation that they need, versus somebody that might be choosing a second career, similar to somebody picking at the FAA, where they're looking for something that is more stable, or how do I think about the health benefits that I need as I'm in another stage in my life. And then the third area last area that I'll talk about that I think we are incredibly excited about is something that has been well publicized, which is about the need for pilots. Because I can tell you that while there are so many roles that are critical for an airline to operate, if we don't have pilots, we don't have the opportunity to fly the schedule we want, or to be able to grow and go to the places that our customers want. And so with the incredible demand that is out there in the industry and the actual shortage that there is, American is proud that we were the first airline to establish what we were calling the Cadet Academy. And this is being able to find and recruit and train individuals with literally no flight experience, and be able to take them through a journey that brings them to achieve their private pilot's license, to be able to become a flight instructor, to be able to grow to become a cadet and an instructor building hours, or a first officer at one of our airlines. And we're incredibly proud. In fact, in today's newspapers, you'll see the article that the first 2 pilots that started off in our very first program back in 2018, they have now officially become what we call mainline pilots. So they're flying for American Airlines, or will be flying very shortly. And that's exciting because, as we've talked about, you have to go build the pipeline in order to be able to meet the demand that is out there. And what better way to do that than being able to go into these communities and spaces. So we're incredibly proud about that, and happy to share and talk about some of the results we're seeing there.
So just not to interrupt, Bobbi, but Thomas, as you were talking, one of the things I think you probably have realized as well is, when we build our own pipeline, that's great. But then you realize you need to start your pipeline even earlier than you thought. And so you thought, okay, well, I'll build it, and then maybe I'll go to colleges, right? Okay, well, then you thought, no, I need to even go earlier. So I'll go to high schools. We are now in middle schools trying to build pipelines. And it's a different type of pipeline. It's building a passion for FedEx and what we do, and the sexy planes and the cool trucks and things like that. But we're realizing you've got to go lower and lower into the education system to build this pipeline.
Oh, you are absolutely right. And hey, Robbin, our airplanes have windows.
Okay, well, you're not supposed to be in the back of ours, yeah, Thomas.
That's right. So when you say cool airplanes, I just had to say that. No, trust me, I love the fact of what you and your team do. But you're 100% right. I mean, in fact, it's funny you mentioned middle school. In fact, many of the members of my team are today at an elementary school in Brooklyn, New York, where this incredible principal, she has of her own accord gone and installed flight simulators to help these young children to be able to gain and appreciate a love for aviation. And, that's where you start to realize. Now, I don't know that you'll see us loitering around nurseries at hospitals, but, the time may come.
Never say never.
Never say never, and it's never too soon. But I will tell you that it is absolutely that, because where do you go capture the imagination? Where do you go have the ability? I just came out of a meeting with a room full of high school guidance counselors talking, and one of our representatives here locally, a congresswoman who is incredible, she's leading these high school counselors throughout the city, meeting with businesses, but that's what we as organizations have a responsibility to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Completely agree.
And, we here at FAA, we found the same experience. So we have a program, we call it STEM AvSed, so STEM Aviation and Space Education. It's a great program because any FAA employee can sign up to be a STEM AvSed counselor and do outreach amongst the schools. And the curriculum that we've developed goes all the way back to kindergarten, because we kind of found the same thing that, kids are talking about wanting to be firefighters and policemen and teachers and doctors and nurses. And we want them to also talk about engineering, maintenance, pilot, and just give that to them, introduce it to them early. So that reaching in there and kindling that passion and hitting age appropriate at the right time is vital. I have a girlfriend, she was a second grade teacher, and she said, that's when you got to get them. You got to get them when they're 7 years old.
A really super interesting perspective. The board did a lot of studies to find out how we get more kids in the pipeline at an earlier age. And the studies that I read talked about how the sort of the magic age is around 12. And if it's 7, boy, we better be paying attention really early.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great info.
She may have had a bias because she taught 7-year-olds.
Well, that may be true, but I'll tell you, it is transformative at that age because they're thinking about what's possible. Their brains are growing so much. They're exposed to so many things. They're learning at a pace that is unlike anything that happens later in their lives. So you're right. And the cool thing about simulators is that you might, if you get an exposure to a simulator at a very young age, you may be interested in how the simulator works, not necessarily piloting the simulator. There's all kinds of exciting things that it can generate, because I think there's also a big misnomer around what kinds of careers are available in aviation, and anybody who does anything can find a place here. It could be security, it could be facilities management, it could be, as Robbin talked about, being an attorney, it could be financial, the list goes on and on and on. Safety folks like Jodi and me. So there's just a tremendous opportunity. So Nicole, what kinds of things have you noticed with regard to shifts in diversity among the applicants or candidates that you're reviewing? You talked about that a little bit, and I know you're very intentional in your work to ensure that the candidates you offer to clients are diverse. Are you seeing a shift at all?
So, I'll explain briefly just how our work is different from the in-house work that Thomas and Robbin, their teams are doing. So when we get engaged by the client and the mandate is very specific around diversity, we've got to go out to market to attract and bring a pool of candidates to the table. What I'd say is interesting is the clients have become so much more focused on ensuring that there are diverse slates under consideration for the leadership positions. Is I'm tapping markets now outside of aviation to attract talent into the industry. And there's general excitement around that. I think the notion that aviation as post-COVID is rebuilding itself to look a lot more inclusive and reflect the markets that they actually serve. There's openness to exploring opportunities in the industry. If we kind of look just the leadership level within the industries, as we're tapping focused on diversity, a lot of times you end up tapping the same people. And so to expand that pool, what we've done is we've had to move beyond and into the adjacencies and broader across industrials.
Yeah, that's a
So
really good point.
It's pulling talent into the space.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point is, when we have a challenge in aviation of growing a sufficient amount of diversity, then pulling in candidates from adjacencies is critically important. Jodi, are you seeing any sort of shifts in the demographics of candidates coming to the FAA?
So I would say incrementally. So we actually did go over we have a scorecard of who are we hiring and how are they doing in the organization. And we're seeing incremental changes of becoming increasingly diverse. It's something that we value and we're looking for it. Kind of like I said before, partnering, we want to raise the pool because again, many people who come to the FAA are on second careers. And so those folks, primarily in the inspector workforce and maybe the engineering workforce, our focus is a little bit further back to make sure that we have people who are qualified and ready to come to the FAA in addition to the folks right now. Of course, we partner with minority serving institutions, historic Black colleges, Hispanic serving institutions. We go out and actually specifically raise awareness to folks because in addition to all the second career hires that we make, we do have spots for first careers. Bobbi, as you suggested, we have doctors, we have lawyers, we have foreign affairs specialists, we have all kinds. We have a whole HR department, budget, hiring. So there's lots of opportunities here within FAA. We just need to make people aware of them. And so I think we are starting to see increases in numbers. I think it's maybe not progressing as rapidly as we like, but we are making forward progress. I remember when I started with the FAA as a 27-year-old female in an office that was, it reflected, it was largely male out on the West Coast. And I remember thinking the entire time that I was a square peg in a round hole. And at the time, I attributed it to a lot of things, age, my gender. And then we actually took Myers-Briggs. And what I recognized is that my personality type was different. And I think that was it was an aha moment for me that I wasn't trying to fit into this system. I was adding to the system. And I don't know if my personality difference is at all related to anything else, but it helped me reframe the conversation. And it helped me, I was more confident in bringing things out. And I think that led to improved teams wherever we've been. So I think it's important to focus on those things too.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. It was such a great example of why diversity is important. We're here today talking specifically about getting more women so we have gender balance in our industry. But the whole point of having diversity is that if you have diversity of opinion, that comes from diversity of representation, which it will make us a safer industry, as Renee talked about in her introduction. It's the reason why the FAA sponsored the Women in Aviation Advisory Board, as they very, very specifically talked about, Dan Elwell talked about when he kicked off the board almost a little over 2 years ago now. So Thomas, one thing the board found out in our research is that as challenging as it is for women in a male-dominated industry, it's even more challenging for women of color. Mm. So is American seeing any shifts in the demographics that reflect more people of color coming to the industry?
I think it depends, Bobbi, on where you look. If you take American as a whole, we're incredibly, excited on the fact that, almost half of our workforce, just over 40% is female. But if you look within, so this is as an overall, but if you look within particular work groups, the majority of those roles are female. And if you look within some of these work groups, you actually find majority diverse females. It depends on the types of roles, the types of opportunities that will be there. What you will find, though, is there are certain work groups, one that is very well known is within our pilot ranks, where you don't see as many women, first off, second, women of color. And that's why work like the Cadet Academy is so important for us as an organization, because we are in this generational moment now. in what has been regarded as one of the greatest landscape shifts with regard to what does representation of pilots look like. We are in the middle where, with the retirements of our pilots that are happening, we'll be hiring nearly 2,000 pilots a year for the next 5 years. Put into perspective, we have 14,000 pilots today. So if you're hiring 2,000 pilots a year, you can be very intentional about what does the face of the flight deck look like. And this is where, when we look at the Cadet Academy, we're so incredibly proud of the fact that half of all of our cadets are diverse. 1 out of every 3 of them are actually women. And when we look at it, nearly a quarter of them are women of color. And so that is something that we are incredibly intentional about. We're starting to see the shifts there. Is it enough? By no means. But this is where I do think things like, it is not just recruiting them to a profession, but then also being very thoughtful and mindful around what are some of the other elements, like the benefits that are important to women joining the workforce. Those are things that companies have to be more progressive about. In fact, one of the things that we've been talking about is, how do we ensure that there are benefits around fertilization and IVF, or even the ability to be able to, for where women would say, look, I want to pursue motherhood, but I need to be able to do it at my time and be able to go do those. Those are very difficult decisions that individuals have to make. How can we as organizations and as companies be empathetic, insightful, and in partnership with these terrific leaders that are helping advocate this to be able to make those possible?
Yeah, that's great, Thomas. Thank you for that. I think it's critically important. Being intentional is essential, because this, while it may happen a bit organically, we also, in the statistics that we looked at, the board found that while the total number of women have gone up in our industry, the percentage has not, because of course our industry has been growing. And so, when we look around, we may say, well, yeah, we see more women, but we're not seeing a higher percentage. And so it's not just going to happen. It's a challenge on every level. It's a challenge when it comes to the cost to enter aviation, which I think all of you have talked about, and how we make that more attractive. So Robbin, I know that FedEx has done a number of great community outreach. You talked a bit about addressing or connecting to that underserved community. Have you seen a shift in the demographics because of that kind of work?
I think we have seen an improvement in terms of our demographics. But what I can say is, we're doing things, in addition to the LIFE program, we have a Spanish speaking initiative. I think Jodi mentioned something about that. And we have partnerships with HBCUs that they just started about probably 8 months ago, that we're really trying to grow and to try to gain more diverse candidates, right? And so we're doing things now that, especially like the Spanish speaking initiative. I mean, you kind of think about that and you think, we should have been doing that years ago, right? We should have translated all of our applications, all of our posters, all of our years ago, and we didn't. It's this pressure, I think, that Thomas was talking about of, oh my gosh, where are we going to get all these employees we need, right? And we need them now. We understand the pipeline about elementary school and middle school, but we also need them now. And it's good to see everybody's eyes opening and a willingness to explore things that people never even thought of before, right? I mean, I don't think anybody ever thought of, do we have an application in Spanish? Because we need one. And now we do, by the way, just in case you're wondering. But it's all these things, I think, working together that improve the diversity of the organization. So.
Yeah, I think that's really important. You're bringing up something that is essential. You can't just open your arms and say everybody is welcome. You actually have to change your processes so people feel like you're building a system that recognizes and values them. And that doesn't just happen. You have to be very specific and intentional about it. So I want to shift back to talk about attracting talent young and getting kids to think about aviation as being a place where they would feel welcome. But also, if you've got some stories and ideas to share with people who are, as Jodi mentioned at the beginning, people who are transitioning careers, please talk about that as well. But I'd like to hear about what sort of engagement programs you have with schools or after school programs, anything that might be student level that could help drive changes. Robbin talked about the LIVE program, but there are many others out there, whether it's Support of Women in Aviation International or the Scouts or whatever it may be. So, and then let me also tell everybody who's dialed in, if you've got a question, please put the question in the chat. We'll be happy to take questions toward the end. So Jodi, I think we'll start with you.
So thanks, Bobbi. I've got two things, sort of the professional, and then I have a little bit of a personal story as well. So professionally, I think one of the best ways to introduce people to the FAA is through our internship programs. And actually, I was an FAA intern. I did not expect to come to the FAA. I was studying international relations. I expected to work for the Foreign Service Department or Foreign Service and be living someplace else. And during college, I actually got an internship at FAA. I was working in the International Aviation office. And it was something that I kept up through my several years of college. And then after I graduated, I considered the FAA, and I wouldn't have necessarily done that if I hadn't had the experience that I had. We met each other when I needed some get some experience and make some money, and the FAA and I got together right at that period of time, and it turned into a career. So I think that's one way to reach out to folks. We actually are wrapping up our intern cycle for the summer, and we're having some presentations today. But I met some of them the other day. One of them, she's studying social media marketing with a minor in music. And she interned with our Office of Communications, developing YouTube videos and TikTok reels. And she just flat out said, that's not something I ever anticipated being able to do with the FAA. Data analytics. We have people that come in with data analytics skills from really diverse backgrounds, criminal justice and other places where they're using data analytics. And we bring them into the FAA and give them some meaty projects, and they really see the possibilities. So I think that's huge, because they've had a positive experience over the summer. If it's not them, it might be somebody that they talk to. On a very personal note, I'm a Scoutmaster. I'm a Scoutmaster of a Girls Scouts BSA troop that was founded in 2021. That's the traditional Boy Scout program, but available to women as well. And I've been folding paper airplanes with Cub Scouts for years. And it's really exciting now that I have 15 girls that are going to be exposed to aviation. And it may be just because of me, but it's 15 more than would have been exposed otherwise. So it can be this larger professional program like internships, and then the contact can be very one-on-one, like me with my Scout troop.
It's such a great story. It's so impactful, and it reminds me of the Chinese proverb where they said the best day to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best day is today. Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. Great. That's great. Robbin, what about you?
It's interesting. We've got a lot of formal programs, internships, but what we're realizing now is that schools within our communities want to hear from us for the first time ever. I mean, I don't think for the past 20 years they really reached out. I don't know what y'all's experience has been, but schools are reaching out more than ever. So I have a young lady on my team who I've asked to put a program together that, whether you're in Memphis or Boise, Idaho, or wherever you are in the US, that we can provide the same information, the same program, the same cool videos. We have this one video, I'm sure you guys at American probably have it too, and well, maybe not this one, but and it shows, Bobbi, you're familiar with it, all the airplanes coming into Memphis at night, and then when they all leave, and it looks like these ants just crawling out, and it's just, kids love this video. I don't know really why. I guess I kind of like it myself, but kids love this video, and they like learning about planes and driving trucks, and of course we tell them about all the cool things. We wouldn't ever tell them about having to actually sit behind a desk and work on a computer, but we really are taking advantage of this opportunity. And now in the Memphis area, I can speak to, we are actually reaching out to schools affirmatively saying, hey, we've got this and we'd like to come talk to you. We are right here and we want to come talk to you. So, and now I'm going to take, I think it was you, Bobbi, who said, but we're heading into the elementary schools tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned. So, but we're just, it's amazing in some ways to see. I think the communities have realized that aviation can be pretty cool. And that's why teachers are doing the things that they are in New York and in Memphis and across the community, where they're putting simulators in high school and middle schools, right? There was no simulator in any high school or middle school that I went to. And this is a personal story, but I remember telling my guidance counselor I wanted to be a pilot. And the guidance counselor looked at me, and he was a very nice man, but he basically patted me on the head and said, there are these things called flight attendants, which is a great job too, but I wanted to be a pilot.
It's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point, because actually we heard that a lot from the board, that a lot of guidance counselors steer young girls away from the more technical professions, which is exactly where we need them and want them, especially if they have an interest in it. Now, if they're not interested, that's fine. That we get hundreds of flight attendants in the door every day here at American who are super passionate about what they do, and they're so good at their jobs, and they completely, totally energizing. But if what you prefer is to be an engineer, then you should have an opportunity to go become an engineer. And that's why Jodi's story about building paper airplanes with little girls gets them to, hopefully that bug will bite them and give them an opportunity to think about their future differently.
Absolutely.
And back to the scouts. So we do scout master conferences with each scout at the point where they're finishing up a rank. And it's just a one-on-one conversation about what have you been doing and what are you thinking about? And one of my questions for scouts is, what's your favorite subject in school? And to a T, all 15 girls, their favorite subject in school is math. And so if their favorite subject in school in 6th grade is math, we definitely have people who are interested in applying math. And so being able to show them possibilities to take that math further, I feel like that's one of the things that we can be doing.
I think that's a really great point. There was an interesting article I read for the board that talked about how girls' confidence levels outpace boys' confidence levels right up to about the age of 12. So right at about the age you're talking about, Jodi. And then at that age, girls' confidence levels tend to plummet, while boys' confidence levels continue to increase over their lifetime. And so the challenge is, how do we capture them at that age? How do we get their attention? How do we encourage them to seek things that are hard, and that it's okay to struggle, that everything, you don't have to be perfect at everything. It's more important to work at something and grow and learn to be successful that way. Nicole, how about you?
So similar to Robin's comment, we're getting more and more requests from schools to come in and talk about leadership and leadership development and just give career advice. But on a more personal level, what I've found is when I show up as a woman and a woman of color, so many young girls want to engage after and learn more about my journey and how I got to where I am today. So I use the firm resources to continue our outreach into the community, but I also make myself available as much as I can to organizations that specifically target young girls of color.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's critically important, Nicole, and before we started, Jodi talked about, if you can see it, you can be it, and the stories associated with that. I think young kids of whatever background think that their future is more limited if they can't see someone who looks like them or somebody who has a similar background to them in positions that they would aspire to, which is one of the reasons why that school age outreach is so important. Thomas, what about you? Any good stories about outreach to kids?
Well, a couple that come to mind for me are the summer camps that we've been doing around the system right now. And, we started probably, in the summer of 2019 with an idea to say, look, how do we connect into a lot of the camps that kids are going into to be able to help them actually imagine the possibilities? And we started off with a very small pilot, and we said, in 2019, we're going to go into earnest in summer of 2020 because that's our year in which we can go and do this. And then lo and behold, but I will tell you, the tenacity of that team in the way they did it, they figured out a way that within a few weeks to pivot to entirely virtual. And given the fact that schools had already started down that path, there was an overwhelming response for these virtual camps to come in. And it gave them a chance to talk to engineers. It gave them a chance to talk to pilots. It gave them a chance to talk to people that were in revenue management and dealing with how do you price flights. Fast forward to when things started to open back up, we had wait lists of tens of hundreds of kids that were wanting to come to the in-person camps that were being held. And now we've even taken, so those are being held at our C.R. Smith Museum, which is part of our corporate campus here, named for the first president of American Airlines. But now we've actually even partnered with the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, OBAP, and we've done and taken these ACE academies on the road. And so what we do is we bring groups of sometimes 50 to 100 kids, and we take them to the biggest airports in our system. You talk about places like DFW or Charlotte or Miami, or even Phoenix or Chicago. And these kids get to see the airline up close. And in many cases, what we often find is that's the first time they've actually even been in an airport. So being in that space now ignites their imagination, and we love seeing it. And we love giving these vests to these kids. And on the back, it reads, "I am the future of American." And we love seeing the pride that they get when they wear that and they're walking around and they see it. And just the last thing I'll share is, I still get such a burst of pride when I see a little girl walk onto the airplane, and when she turns left and looks in the flight deck, and to see her eyes light up and pull at her parent and say, "Mom or Dad, look," or they hear the voice of the pilot on the PA system and they realize that it's a woman. It doesn't happen enough. But that's the work that's in front of us, and that's the work that we're committed and excited to go do. But I love seeing that imagination spark right then, because that's when, to Jodi, what you said, they realize it's possible.
So inspirational. All this is just so inspirational. I'm going to pivot on this last question, and I'm going to ask, instead of what are the 3 things that you wish school-age kids knew about aviation, I'm going to ask, what are the 3 things you wish parents, teachers, and guidance counselors, because they have a chance to impact hundreds of students. So what are the 3 things you wish those adults who can impact young lives knew about aviation? Nicole, we're going to start with you.
Sure. I'm actually going to highlight the one thing that I'd love that group to really embrace and really advocate with their students, is the fact that aviation is the future as well. I mean, where we're going in terms of technology and innovation in aviation, it's so exciting. And I think when we look at young people today and the level of creativity and where they are in their thinking, way beyond where I was when I was their age. I mean, I'd love those folks who have greatest influence to really expose them more to aviation as a potential career path, and not just sort of limit the messaging to the obvious paths such as just airlines or going to one of the big manufacturers, but just the fact that the possibilities when you merge such an established industry with technology, the possibilities for them in terms of their future, it's endless.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I love that. Thank you. Thomas, how about you?
So I'd, as a recovering management consultant, I love the fact of that you ask for threes, because I think that's the way that I try to think as well. For me, the first is, I think I would love for parents and, even teachers to understand that these are noble professions. When we think about a role within aviation and you think about the purpose with which these jobs exist and what we collectively as professionals get to do, that these are professions that are indeed noble, that when we think about roles as a mechanic or as a flight attendant or as a pilot, or even like we mentioned in yield management, that there are incredible purpose-driven roles and purpose-driven organizations behind that. The second part I would ask, would love for them to remember is the idea of potential, that these are roles that when we talk about, the ability for an individual to become a pilot, it allows the creation of generational wealth, that these are roles that at some level pay more than most traditional four-year degrees have. And so if people think that, like, oh, well, and trust me, coming from the cultural background that I come from, being Indian, there was one of two options: be a doctor or be an engineer. And maybe if you wanted, be a lawyer. My mom still tells me, are you sure you can't be a doctor? And we'll see if I can still, redeem myself. But, those are usually some of the stigmas that people will, regardless of the societies and backgrounds they come from, have to overcome. But these are jobs with tremendous potential. And the last thing I'd say is around possibility, given the fact that these are, jobs of purpose, they have such incredible potential. I want people to recognize they're possible, that these are no longer the jobs that people look at and say, oh, I could never be that. But the doors that have opened through financing, through accessibility, through internships and partnerships, it is absolutely possible for them to go achieve these.
Wonderful. Thanks, Thomas. Very, very, very good. Thank you. Jodi, we're going to jump to you.
It gets harder the further down the list you go. So, Robbin, I'm sorry.
I know. I think the pressure should be off and I should just have one thing. I don't know. You all sound great.
So 3 things that I wish teachers and guidance counselors and influential adults knew. First, I think it's been touched on before, but aviation is far bigger than what you see at the airport. So be expansive and recognize that kids of all interests can find a place in aviation. My daughter, not particularly interested in aviation until she realized that people had to design the interior of aircraft, and she thought that was pretty interesting. So that was something that just had to be suggested to her. The second thing is related to that. Aviation really has a place for all kinds of students. So it isn't necessarily, your kids, you're going to have kids who are going to go to college, you have kids who are going to learn a trade, you have kids that are going to do all kinds of things, and there's a place in aviation for all of those people. So it isn't just the realm of you're going to go to college and then you're going to move into your aviation career. So opportunity, I think that's echoing Thomas. And I would really not be doing the FAA service if I didn't point out public service is a very noble profession as well. And there is really something very rewarding about serving others and serving the American public. And so that's something that I like to promote with the FAA. Its mission and the fact that it really is a service job for the people of the United States.
For that, Jodi. Whoops, sorry, go ahead.
And our broad international impact as well.
It's true. Yeah, it's very true. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that service element of working for the government and the FAA in particular, the FAA is our first line of defense when it comes to safety in the industry, is establishing the standard for all the carriers and manufacturers here in the US. So Robbin?
Well,
you only have to do one.
Okay. Well, I may have two. Okay. So first thing I think I would like to say is, and you've heard all of us speak about this, but we love to talk about our companies or our organizations. Just call us, just ask us, and we may scare you because we may send a team in. But we love to talk about how great we are and all of the different opportunities we have within our organizations. And so teachers, parents, probably teachers more than parents, give us a call. We love it. The other thing is I think there are resources to help people who want to learn more about aviation and how to navigate the various careers. Thomas mentioned OBAP. We know about the International Aviation Women's Association. There's Women in Aviation. I mean, Google is a great thing, and you can learn so much about scholarships that may be available, organizations that will help you, whatever it is. So take advantage of those. So those are my two.
Thank you, Robbin. That's really great. And the one that I would leave everyone with, any adult who is thinking about influencing the young minds that they have around them, and it is something covered by nearly everybody. When you are part of an organization that supports airplanes, when a plane flies over, you're going to feel proud too. Whether you're on board the airplane piloting it or working as a cabin crew, you still have a part. Everybody contributes to getting that plane safely in the air and getting it landed so that you can do the job that you've committed to people that you could do. So thank you to all my panelists for joining today. Thank you for your insights and your passion around this topic. Thank you for the work that you do every single day to influence the people under your within your care. It's critically important. Even one person at a time, it matters.
Thanks for having us, Bobbi.
Bobbi, thanks so much for setting up this panel today. It's been so inspirational to me, and I'm sure to everyone else who's speaking. And the one thing that I'll close with today is that it's amazing to hear what very large and influential companies are doing to build their own pipeline. But my biggest takeaway is probably something that Jodi said about reaching just one person at a time. So I would encourage everyone who's listening to this, you can make a difference whether you have a huge budget or you don't have any budget at all, just by having your eyes open and reaching out to people who might show interest in the industry. Thank you all so much for participating today. This has been powerful.